Welcome back to 100 Days of 6-Minute Stories. My name is Andrea Kwamia. And I mentioned in a previous story that I grew up in the Hudson Valley. And in that location, there is so much biodiversity. There are trees everywhere. Where our old house was built used to be an apple orchard. So you see different types of birds, plants, insects, slugs, frogs, everything that are just in your backyard, which a lot of my friends from the city didn't believe me sometimes with that, like having a deer walk around in your front yard is just a normal thing there. And I remember in middle school, going on to high school, I used to like to build things with my dad, so I would often go to the warehouse with him if he had to go to Home Depot. And there was one particular day where we were shopping in Home Depot and we noticed that something had fallen off of the rafters because Home Depot is pretty much a shell. It's very minimalistic. And a bird had built a nest that fell off the rafters. So there was an abandoned baby bird that was in the middle of Home Depot. So I asked if we could take the bird home and make sure he was healed and fed. So we brought this bird home, a little sparrow, and all of my siblings were extremely excited, and we named him Pascal. But the way I thought of Pascal was that he was my pet, that he was basically my baby. So my mom would help me every morning mash up a meal for him to eat, and I fed him. At the time there were a lot of worms in our backyard, and even at one point we had a worm farm, which is another time. But I was able to feed him when he got bigger and he was able to eat more solid foods. And we used to have a garden in the backyard where we grew sunflowers and squash. And when he got old enough, he would follow me around. He would hop and follow me around. Essentially, it was like that bird from Are You My Mother in that children's book. So when as time went on, I think it was 8th grade, there was the following summer, where I got into a special camp, an engineering camp, where my middle school would be meeting up with a neighboring middle school with all of the other students that were chosen. And I was excited to go, but at that point I had spent almost every waking minute with Pascal during the summer. And he was getting to an age where instead of sleeping inside, he was ready to roost. He was ready to perch and live in the trees at night, and then he would fly back into our house during the morning. So the first day of camp, of course, I was running a little bit late. I was a little bit flustered, and Pascal had gone out the night before to roost, and when I woke up, he wasn't home yet. So I was telling my dad was like, we have to leave now. We have to get to camp. And I was really hesitant because I didn't see where Pascal was. So I went to camp, and I was really annoyed because how first days are. Things didn't even start on time. There was an orientation, and other people were late too. So I essentially got there early and didn't know where my pet was. So when I got home, he was not home. So I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know how to feel. And if you know me, I think I've had one other pet personally since. We had a family pet, but I just felt really heartbroken that during this moment, I felt like it was my responsibility to know where Pascal was, to have watched him, to have waited until I knew he had come back home after I saw him in the morning. So my family assures me that maybe Pascal was old enough, that he found a mate, that maybe he flew away, and that he was safe. And I truly hope that is so, because it made it really hard for me to connect with other small creatures, because it was honestly my first experience with personal grief, like if anything, even an arbitrary loss of a pet, because I didn't know what happened to him and I couldn't properly grieve. I just felt a lot of guilt. That said, having a pet and having a little baby bird grow up and watching them change in front of you was what I would liken to my first experience with motherhood. And it I'm not thinking about human motherhood anytime soon, but it was such a joyous experience to love something from the beginning of their existence, and watch them go off and spread their wings. Thanks. I'll see you tomorrow.